See, not that one, this one. All right, welcome everybody to day number 2. Just want to check if everyone can hear me. I'll share my screen. Like so. Okay, good. So I wanted to check which were the assigned sections today, but I would have to go to the website to do that. I can't quite remember. I think it's all the way up to chapter 3. Let's just have a look here. Where's my login? Don't want to show my password. If I move this tab over here. Whoopsie, that's not what I want to do. Come on. All right, so for Tuesday, today, we're only expected to finish chapter 2. So that's not so bad. That's not so bad. Not bad at all. So like these sessions, like all these sessions will be, it is largely guided by your questions, your needs. I can't guess what they are. So say again?
Sorry, I didn't put it in yet.
No, I'm not sure if she was talking to me. It's whatever your questions you bring, whatever your needs are. We're trying to get through chapter 2. And yesterday we talked a little bit about logical statements and negation, as well as what's expected from chapter 1 being the introduction chapter. So not much is expected. Know the different kinds of reasoning, examples, perhaps, pros and cons to both. And now we're into the chapter where we want to use that logical reasoning skills. Now, as the puzzles progress, we're not going to write out our argument because that will take forever. But I do want to have a level of awareness when I do a Sudoku puzzle, when I do a Lady or the Tiger problem or something else. What are my steps that I follow to get to a conclusion that is 100% certain? So we break it up into some well-known puzzles, Karuji and Sudoku, being sort of similar in the grid-based setup, Lady or the Tiger questions, and then a mix of some other logical puzzles. I will say here, let me just go to the problems of Lady or the Tiger. Problem 211 and 212 are a little bit different and definitely more advanced, I would say. So that is not in line with what the test questions will be. The test questions will be pretty straightforward and familiar. So if you feel like this is going too fast, you're not ready for anything other than Lady and the Tiger in that section, you are welcome to leave out problem 211 and 212. It won't disadvantage you in any way. And I certainly do not want to look at those kinds of problems if I'm not perfectly happy with all the Lady and the Tiger various questions. That's just those couple of problems. I don't want to remove them from the book, but they're certainly a little beyond what the test question would be. All right, we don't have any questions at this time. So did everyone work their way up to chapter 2. And is everything perfectly clear? That is the question. Often with Lady and the Tiger problems, I think those are the stage where things get a little sticky.
Hi. I was
Hi.
just wondering, you could go over like the Lady and the Tiger. I like was watching the video, but I didn't really understand how to like figure them out, and I'm still like sort of confused about it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why these sessions, that's what we're doing here. Um, so there's definitely a basic approach. And then from one question to the next, the rules might be different. The king might say something. So there are some variations within that. But the basic way of how I approach this is going to be the same. Now, in the video, I hope, not sure exactly what was said in those specific videos, but there are two main strategies. If we look at an example uh, like exercise 210, let me see if I can zoom in a little more. Yes. So we have this basic setup. The king is going to say something, and that is the rules of the game, so to speak. We're not going to question what the king says. So in this exercise, the king announces that one of the signs is true, the other one is false. So I can work within that rule, so to speak. And there could be ladies and tigers or a combination, but one behind each door. I'm not sure what is behind the door. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And based on what the doors are saying, or the signs above the doors, I have to try and figure it out. Now, there are two strategies that I'll just walk through. Let's read what the doors are saying. Door 1 says, in this room there's a lady, and in the other room there is a tiger. So that is going to be true only when I have both of these pieces in an and statement. I need both of them to be true, the first part and the second part. So there's also some variety in what those statements are saying and how they are phrased. And in the other door, it says, in one of these rooms there's a lady, and in one of these rooms there's a tiger. So a little bit vague, but I still have this and statement. So I have two strategies, pros and cons to both. One strategy is to build from the deductive reasoning template where what the king is saying is can be used as the premise. It's a fact, and try and come up with some sentences to systematically work my way to a sound conclusion. And it could go something like this. And as we work through this bottom paragraph, I want to keep in mind what are the pros and cons here. So we could say, if door 1 is true, then what it's saying is true. In this room there's a lady, and in the other room there's a tiger. So lady in room 1, tiger in room 2, if door 1 is true. And we don't know. But let's assume that it is and see where that takes us. If door 1 is true, then there is a lady and a tiger somewhere. So that means door 2 is also true, because door 2 says, in one of these rooms there's a lady, and in one of these rooms there's a tiger. So that would make both of them true. But what the king says is that one of the signs is true, the other one is false. So my initial assumption of door 1 being true leads me to a conclusion that contradicts the king, and that is a no-no, that is not allowed, which leads me to believe or conclude that my initial assumption was not correct, and the opposite then has to be true, that door 1 is in fact false. So this contradicts what the king says, and therefore can't be the case. So now we know door 1 is false. But one of them is true, so that means door 2 is true. So door 2 says there is a lady somewhere, and there is a tiger somewhere. But door 1, remember, is now false, so it can't be lady in door behind door 1, tiger behind door 2, because that's exactly what door 1 says. So the opposite has to be true. Now, if that was in any way confusing, that is perfectly normal. This strategy of having statements and arguments leading me to the conclusion is a necessary strategy when I have a lot of options or a lot of doors. And it's certainly clean, and I can certainly find shortcuts in this strategy. But the downside, and it's a big one, is that it can be very confusing, especially as I'm starting to learn these things. It's not a good one to learn with. It's not easy at all. So luckily, because we have only 2 doors, the options for ladies and tigers behind them are very limited. And we can take a more guess and check approach, because if I list all the options, there really aren't that many. And that is going to be a much easier strategy to start with and understand what to do. So regardless, if I have 2 doors, regardless, let me just fix my pen here. Not that way. Okay, I see a pen, it's just not very big. Seven should be good. That's okay. Come on. I want to see you. 10. There we go. That's good. Okay, so if I have 2 rooms, room 1 and room 2, regardless of what the signs are saying, regardless of what the king is saying, I can list all my possibilities. There could be, best case scenario, a lady behind each door. I don't know. It could be the prisoner's lucky day. Or it could be a mix, lady and then tiger. Or it could be the other way around, tiger and then lady. Or it could be the prisoner's worst day and there could be a tiger waiting behind each door. But because I only have 2, there are only these 4 possibilities. There is nothing else, which means one of these 4 possibilities will definitely work. And that's a manageable number to work with. I can now go and say, well, I don't know which one it is. I randomly just listed them. I can just start with the first one that I happen to have listed and work my way through and eliminate ones that do not fit with the extra rules the king gives me. And I will be left with just one, and that has to be the solution. So if I now say, okay, so now let's look at what the doors are saying. Whoops. Door 1 says, okay, so now my new strategy is I'm going to look at just this first row, this first scenario. Can that possibly happen? I don't see any of this. I listed them all to see how many options I really have. But when I look at one, I just look at that row. So when I now look at row 1, for the next little bit, I assume there's a lady behind each door. So then door 1 says, in this room there is a lady, and in the other room there is a tiger. Is that true or false? No, the choices are true or false. Silence is not one of the options.
It's false.
It is false because there isn't a tiger in the other room. So I got half of it, but the and statement requires that I hit both of those. So that's false. So I don't care if it's false or not. I care about the whole scenario being possible, so I need to look at what door 2 says as well. And door 2 says something a little different. It's a similar statement, not exactly the same. In one of these rooms, there's a lady, and in one of these rooms, there's a tiger. But there's no tiger in this first scenario. That's also false. However, the king says one of these signs is true, the other one is false. Yet in this first scenario, I would necessarily get both signs false, and that is therefore not possible because I cannot go against what the king says. The king isn't trying to trick me. He's giving me extra information. So then that one is out, but I'm not discouraged because I have 3 possible scenarios left. I just have to eliminate all but one. So then I keep going through the list until I get just one being possible, and that has to be the solution. And that's going to be a much more manageable strategy, less confusing, and it has the another downside of strategy, of the wordy strategy, is from one question to the next, there's no consistency. I'm going to have a completely different starting point next time. And what's confusing here is, how do I know to look at door 1 first? It's really just experience, but that makes it very difficult to get a handle on initially. Whereas for this strategy, if I have 2 rooms and it's a lady in the tiger setup, this is always the 4 possibilities that I'm going to start with. Now, yes, the signs say some things and the king says something. So how I evaluate if a row is possible or not will, of course, depend on the actual question. But my starting point, my setup, has this consistency that can give me confidence and that I can build on. Okay, so this is going to be how we approach it. And that's going to go over into knights and knaves and those things as well. That, yes, if I have 10 rooms, this is not going to be fun at all. And I'm going to have to shift to the wordy strategy. But I'm also not going to start with 10 rooms. I'm starting with something simple. Okay, so there were questions on problem 2.9 and 2.10. Let's just see what they are. I don't want to jump too much, just check where we're at. 2.9, 2.10, 2.9, 2.10. That's actually a bad one. Yeah, I like this one. This is a good one to do next. So now I see, okay, fine. The king says some stuff. There's some ladies and tigers. And I now have 3 doors. That's not really going to be an overwhelming number of options. I'm going to stick to this strategy. And only when I am super comfortable and I've gotten a lot of experience will I step away from this. And that's not going to happen in this course. So, problem 2.9. 2.9. I have 3 doors. That's okay. Door 1, door 2, door 3. And as I recommended yesterday, I have not looked at the answers. I don't remember how I wrote the answers because I can't, an answer key, though I do put it on the website to make some people happy, it's not really a good learning tool. And a person that you can ask questions to and that can change how they explain things, that's way better. Now, I have to check, this isn't necessarily the case where all doors could have ladies and tigers behind them. Maybe the king says a little bit more. The king announced one of the rooms contained a lady and the other 2 contain tigers. That makes it even easier. There could be a lady behind door 1 and then of course tiger, tiger. So my setup is the only thing I care about right now. Just to check, can everyone hear me and see me? It's very quiet and it makes me very uncomfortable. I need constant validation that I'm doing a good job. A virtual pat on the back. Okay, good. Good job, me. So it's not even the full 3-door possible scenarios. There could be a lady behind door 2 and then therefore tiger and tiger. And a lady behind door 3. So it's even better. Yeah, 3 doors. Maybe that looked intimidating. I have only 3 options. Doesn't get much better than this. Okay, so now my setup is okay. And I find people, they're just not patient enough. They want to get to the answer right away. No, set it up and trust in the journey, and the answer will reveal itself. It's not even something I need to worry about. So now I do need to understand my strategy, and that I'm going to look at one of these rows. I do finish my list, but when I look at this first row, I don't see anything else. That's the only thing I focus on. And I'm trying to evaluate, is that possible? Can there be a lady behind door 1 and a tiger behind each of the other doors? Is that consistent with what the king says and the rules of this specific problem? So, okay, we did the first question, the first sentence, and that allowed us to eliminate some possibilities right away. He further explained that the sign on the door of the room containing a lady was true, and at least one of the other signs was false. Okay, it's fine. But once I evaluate, that'll be sort of my measuring stick. Once I figure out what the doors are saying for this scenario, then I'll see how does that match up with what the king is saying. So let's look at the doors. Door 1 says, a tiger is in room 2. That's true, a tiger is in room 2 in this scenario that I'm investigating. So that is very much true. And of course, feel free to stop me at any point. It's almost a must. Don't wait until I finish and then say, I don't understand what you did in row 1. No, stop me when that happens. We have over an hour and not much else to do. So get the benefit. It's up to you. Door 2 says, a tiger is in this room. Yes, tiger's right there. True. Door 3 says, a tiger is in room 1. No, in this scenario, a lady is in room 1. So that's going to be a false. Now, so I get true, true, and false. Now I measure that against what the king says. And he says that the sign on the door of the room with a lady was true. Good, yes. At least one of the other 2 signs was false. Yes. So that definitely seems possible. But for my peace of mind, maybe I just got lucky. It's probably a good idea initially to check all of these rows because there should only be one answer. So the way I listed them, I just happened to list the right one first. Suspicious. I'm going to go to the next one and eliminate these and make sure that they aren't possible as well, because then I made a mistake somewhere. So it's just for practice, though in a test, if you find early on a possible row, you are welcome to stop. You don't have to check them all. But there's a safety check that if I eliminate the other 2, then I'm more confident in my answer. So let's do that for practice. Since there aren't any other questions, we'll get to 2.10. So now I'm investigating the row tiger, lady, tiger. Door 1 says a tiger is in room 2. A tiger is not in room 2. There is a lady there. Now that's not necessarily a bad false or a good false. I have to look at the whole row, the whole scenario. Door 2 says a tiger is in this room. No, there's a lady in there. That's false. Now, for the sake of being complete, I'll finish it. Door 3 says a tiger is in room 1. Yeah, sure. There's a tiger in room 1. Now, tiger's right there. Now I match that with what the king is saying in his rules for this specific problem. The sign on the door of the room containing a lady has to be true. But no, this door contains a lady in my scenario, yet the sign is false. So that is not possible since it contradicts some part of what the king is saying. So that is out, making me feel better about my row 1 conclusion. I'll do one more row for my peace of mind and the practice. I need to practice. We don't have that many Lady or the Tiger questions, so I want to get as much practice as I can out of each one. Tiger, Tiger, Lady. Door 1 says, a tiger is in room 2. Yes, a tiger is right there in room 2. Door 2 says, a tiger is in this room. Yes, a tiger is in this room. Now let's finish it. Door 3 says, a tiger is in room 1. A tiger is in room 1. Now I look at what the king says. The door with a lady has to be true. Yep, has to be true. And it is. Door 3 has a lady behind it, and it is, in fact, true. But also, at least one of the other 2 signs was false. Yeah, but they're both true. They're both true. So that is not in line with what the king says. Sad face. So that's not possible, but it's actually a good thing because I should have only one answer, and that is my answer. So choose door 1. Again, if you find one that's possible, you don't have to test them all. You are welcome to stop, but it does give me some peace of mind that I've eliminated all the other ones. Are there any questions on problem 2.9 while I check some private messages? Probably students that need the correct permission.
So they have to be correct as per the doors and then follow up with the king's rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to evaluate what the doors are saying, true, false, whatever, and then match it with what the king is saying and see, does that fit? Because I cannot go against the king. The king's not tricking me. It's just giving me extra information. So that's sort of my benchmark or measuring stick. Like, oh, does it match with what the king says? Is this possible? Does all the information, does it all agree? Is it consistent? And only one of them will be.
There's some, I watched the YouTube video, and there's some where you put the, like, what it should be and then what it is.
Yes, we're building up to that. We're building up to that. Those are the harder ones for sure.
Oh, okay. So there is 2 different types. I'm not losing my mind.
I would say, yeah, there are 2 main types. These are the more basic ones, 2, 3 doors, whatever, where I'm not ignoring what the king says. Like we did do part of what the king said in terms of the choices, but in terms of what should be true, what should be false, we leave that until the end.
Okay.
Now, the variation, which might be 210, problem 210, let me just quickly scan over it. It's not quite. I'm going to go... Actually, I think problem 210 might be a good middle ground. Yeah. There isn't much difference in how we handle the more difficult ones. We're going to take the same approach. And in fact, we want to keep our strategy as close to the same as possible from one question to the next. Even when I go to knights and knaves, like, oh, it's a different question. I want to keep it as familiar, as consistent as possible. And if I can use a strategy I've seen before, I'm going to do that. So this one, we're just going to set it up. 3 doors, not a problem. I've handled 3 doors before, and see where we get. Where we get into potential problems, and there might not be any. So we have a strategy that works for our level of question, It's not going to work if I have 10 doors. Well, it's not going to work, but it's extremely tedious. This sort of brute force guess and check through all the options approach certainly has its downsides, but not really for us. And it's certainly something that it's a place where I want to start. If you look at some basic elementary school concepts, a lot of the problem solving starts with a guess and check approach. Just list all the possibilities, just eliminate them all, because we're building up to the situation where we can come up with fancier arguments. That's not a starting point. So I want to check, is there anything that eliminates options for me? Because 3 doors, there might be a lot of options if I allow multiple ladies, which may or may not happen. King announced. One of the rooms contained a lady, one contained a tiger, one was empty. All right. So I could have lady, tiger, and empty. Or with a lady in room 1, the empty and tiger room could be the other way around. So when I make my list of possible scenarios, I do want to have some structure here as well. I don't want to randomly just put in the words, because I might miss one. Oh, excuse me. I might miss one, and that, with my luck, will be the right one. So I want to make sure that my list of possible scenarios my list is complete. So with a lady behind door 1, those are the only possibilities. So then I move the lady to door 2, and that will again have a tiger, empty, or the other way around. And I can't say for sure which one is happening. And lastly, lady could be, of course, behind door not 3. I'm thinking 3. Don't write 3. Behind door 3. And then it could be tiger, empty for the other 2, or the other way around. Now, sure, I've doubled up my possible scenarios to 6, but that's really not anything too intimidating. I don't know where the answer is. I'm just going to go through them. First one, there's no indication of which one is better than another one. Is everyone happy with my setup with 6 possibilities? Okay, so because, that's very important, that our strategy relies on us being able to set up all the possibilities. So it's never going to be an overwhelming number, but we definitely want to be sure. So again, the king says some stuff, and regardless of how we did it, how I may or may not have done that in a video a couple of years ago, I think for consistency, coming from the previous questions, we are going to use what the king says in terms of true and falseness at the end. And we'll decide, well, if this first scenario is in fact what's happening, let's see what the doors are saying. And then we'll match it with what the king is saying. Okay, door 1 says room 3 is empty. Room 3 is empty. True. Door 2 says the tiger is in room 1. No. I can't believe we're going to be lucky again. I just randomly wrote these down, right? I have no idea which one the right one is. I could get very lucky, or the very last one could be the right one. I really don't know. And then door 3 says some stuff, but I really can't evaluate. Well, I can, but I can't evaluate it, to be fair. This room is empty. Sure, but you could be true or false. Empty room. Doesn't really matter. Now, in order for me to decide if this is possible or not, I match it against what the king is saying. King says, room containing a lady has to be true. Good, true. Sign on the door. Sign on the door containing the tiger was false. Oh, that's also true. And for the empty room, I could be either true or false. So there's nothing that says true can't happen. So I just got very lucky, and I didn't remember the answers to all these problems. We just got lucky. Now, it's a little unfortunate because I do perhaps need the practice. So let's at least do a couple more to realize that that's not a fluke. But again, in a test, you're welcome to stop as soon as you find the possible one. But what if I made a mistake? What if I just misread something? If another one of these come out as possible as well, then I need to double check because that could indicate a mistake. So it's a good safety to go through all of them, but it is totally up to you. Let's do a couple at least. So now I'm looking at scenario 2, and I'm seeing what the doors are saying. Door 1 says room 3 is empty. Room 3 is not empty. Room 3 has a tiger, so that's false. Now, of course, we could stop right there because we keep in mind what the king said in his extra information. Room containing a lady was true. So I could say right here, well, this cannot happen. I don't even have to check the rest. There is already a contradiction happening right away, and it's therefore not possible. But if I leave what the king says until the very end, I don't have to stop it right away. I can still go through the whole thing. But door 1 is false regardless. I continue. I don't really care what an empty room says, but I can do it anyway. The tiger is in room 1. No, it's not. But that's never going to be a contradiction because empty can be true or false. Door 3 says this room is empty. That is not true. Now door 3 is behaving consistently because a tiger in the room, it should be false. So that's good. But the lady portion is not in line with what the king said. And it has to all be consistent. There can't be any mismatch of information. And therefore that one is not what's happening. Should we do one more? Are there more questions? It's your course, your class. You tell me what I should be doing.
So with these kinds of questions, is there only going to be one right answer?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so that's why you're saying if on the test you find the possible one, you can just stop?
If you didn't make any mistakes accidentally, that is going to be the right answer. I get a little more confident if I eliminate the others, but you don't have to. No, there's only going to be one right answer. So it's totally up to you. Yeah.
I came up here late, sorry, but like I was wondering if you go over like problem 2.6.
Let us look what 2.6 is. I don't think these
And it's
necessarily
page
go
34.
in order. Let's just... yeah, that's exactly what I'm going for. I'm working my way up to this one. If a lady is in room 1, yeah, this is exactly what I'm building up to. So we see that sometimes if I just can find a simple one, like the very first example. Where's the very first example? The king says something about signs being true or not. And we use that information at the very end to decide if our row, our scenario, matches with what the king says, if it's possible or not. Then if we look at the problem we just did, problem 210, you see here, the king can sometimes help me eliminate some options and reduce the list of possible scenarios that I can need to look at by saying, oh, there's only one lady and the other room contains a tiger and so on, allowing me to have fewer possibilities, but I still leave his information about true signs and false signs until the end. When I have my row evaluated, then I use what the king said to decide if it's possible or not. Let's make a new page here. Now, the most difficult of these, seemingly, they're not really, if I take the most effective approach, which is if whatever the king says about truth and false and things like that, that stays until the end. And that's exactly what is happening here. It says, or the king says, or something, there's information. If a lady's in room 1, then the sign is true. But if a tiger is in it, then the sign is false. If a lady is in room 2, then the sign is false. But if a tiger is in it, then the sign is true. That's just going to confuse me worrying about that now. Now, of course, there are variations in this strategy where I could do that first. But the newest updated version, to be consistent and make it as easy as possible, is to leave that information until the end. Let's see how that goes. I understand that perhaps in the video I did not do that, but maybe you prefer this more than the video, maybe the video more than this. It's good to have some options. So just be aware that it's not going to be a copy of the video, since I think this might be easier for some people. Regardless, I don't care about the information. I'm setting this up. Is there any information to reduce my list of 4? No. So I am going to write them out. Nope, I'm going to do it in exactly the same way I always do, because that gives me confidence. And I always start with the 2 lady scenario. Now I could be lucky or unlucky. I don't know. There's no reason to mix these up. Sometimes the very first one, like we saw, is my answer. Sometimes the very last one is my answer. I have no way of knowing. So I always do the same list as much as I can. And now I'm looking at the first scenario. As great as that sounded, it could happen. I can't count that out just yet. And I see what the doors are saying. Door 1 says, now the doors are saying slightly more tricky things, but still my strategy is the same. So what we're doing here, if I go to a previous page, this is our work. And we can then just say choose door 1 in this case. There's my answer. There's my work showing that I eliminated some possibilities. There's my test answer complete. There's no need for full sentences for these because there's just no time. It'll take forever. You'll be writing so many sentences. That's not the strategy we were looking for. We are looking for this.
I was just wondering, before we go back, let's say it was like one of the options that's at the end. What like door number would you put on the test?
Which one are you looking at? We're looking for whatever door the lady is in.
The example we just did though before, like let's say we'd wrote it out and like the top, like the right row was actually at the bottom, would it still be like considered door 1, I guess?
Yes, because this is really my answer.
Okay.
So even if, let's suppose this was the right scenario at the very bottom, then the lady would be behind door 3, so that's the door I would choose.
Okay.
So it's whatever door contains the lady, because the prisoner is probably going to get eaten in the other scenarios.
Okay, thanks.
The lady just represents the prisoner's freedom. It could have been anything.
Okay.
Well, probably not another vicious animal. Anyway, so this one, I'm doing the same thing.
Sorry, Stephen.
Yes.
We only more pay attention to what the king said and what it said on sign, correct?
There are different stages here. I'm trying to make this as super easy as possible. And what helps me make things easier is to have consistency from one question to the next, where I feel like I'm doing the same thing. I know the next lady in the Tiger, half of it, I already know what I'm going to do, and that gives me a lot of confidence. What we're going to do is, if the king allows, or if the king says things that allows me to eliminate some of my scenarios right away, I'm going to use that at the start. So like problem 2.9, the king announced that one of the rooms contained a lady and the other two contained tigers. So I'm never going to have a lady scenario then. So there's no need to even list that. The king simplifies my list right away. So I'm doing that first. Now in problem 2.6, there's nothing like that. So I'm going to go with my full list. That's the first thing that I'm looking for. Is my list being reduced, making my job easier? Yes or no? Then after that, I have my list of scenarios. I don't care about what the king says after that. I'll care at the end. Now in my list of scenarios, I understand my strategy is to look at one row at a time. Even though I've listed them all, when I look at the lady row, nothing else exists. Nothing else exists, and I have to sort of put blinders on. I don't see any tigers, any other rows, only this one exists. That is part of my strategy. And then I examine or evaluate what the doors are saying in assuming this scenario is what's happening. Let's see what the doors are saying. And then afterwards, we'll match it and see how it compares to what the king says to be fact. So the rest, if the king says anything about true and false, that happens at the very end. And I think that might be easier, but it's not the only way, absolutely. I'm looking for that consistency. So I'm looking at the lady scenario. Door 1 says, it makes no difference which room you pick, true or false.
Is it true because there's ladies in both?
It's true.
doors?
You could pick either one. You get a lady either way. It makes no difference. That's true. So then I go to door 2. Door 2 says, there is a lady in the other room. Yeah, there is. That's true as well. Now, to figure out if this is possible or not possible, I am going to have to use the information that the king gives me. And that information, in this case, is a little convoluted. It says, if a lady is in room 1, then the sign has to be true. I got it. Oh, where's mine? There we go. I got a lady in room 1. The sign should be true. It is. Good. Now, I don't have tigers, so I can ignore that. That's going to come with other scenarios. If a lady is in room 2, then the sign should be false. Oh, but I have a lady in room 2. The sign should be false, yet I got it true. That is not consistent. So sadly, it is not possible. It doesn't match up. Door 2 doesn't behave the way it should behave. So that means that scenario could not be what's happening, because then door 2 would be telling the truth, yet it's not allowed to. And the whole scenario, as wonderful as it would have been, is out. Any questions on how we approach it in this way? And I think that makes this rule set, this kind of problem, perhaps a little easier. But worry about it at the end, instead of worrying about it in the beginning, which in the video we may or may not have done. I think we eliminate some confusion if we always keep the true, false information until after I've evaluated my scenario. Are there any thoughts before we do the second scenario? No thoughts. Silent thoughts. Any thought at all? Big thought? Profound thought? Small thought?
I guess like a way that it made sense to me is it's sort of like similar to like the Sudoku puzzle and like I can't even say the name. The other puzzle that we did, it's sort of like you sort of like follow the rules, but then at the end like use them to make sure you got to like the right place in a way, I guess. If that makes sense?
Yes. There's certainly, yeah, what could potentially make this more confusing is that there are different approaches within this strategy for Lady and the Tiger. I can use all the information at the start before I even look at a scenario and use that to, as I work my way through the scenario, decide if it's possible or not. Or I can leave some information until the end, which in the Sudoku Karuji problems, we didn't really have that option. We needed the information before we could write in anything. But I would say whatever works for you, build some consistency in how you approach these. Try and always do it the same way, because it's really a confidence game. And if I feel like, oh, this problem is so different from this problem and now it's different again, that is when things get overwhelming and frustrating. If I can see some similarities, some consistency, then I'm going to feel better, whatever that may be for you. Okay, let's do another one. Why is that line there? Let's check the second scenario. Lady, Tiger. All right. Door 1 says, it makes no difference which room you pick. True or false?
It'd be false because there's a tiger in one of them.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. One, you walk away with a lady. The other one, you are dinner. Makes a difference. And the door says it makes no difference. That's false. It does make a difference. Now, of course, you can always keep in mind all the information and right away say, well, if there's a lady in room 1, the sign has to be true, yet I got one that's false. Right away, that's out. Or you can leave it until the very end and say, I'm finishing my scenario, what the doors are saying, and then I will match that and see if there's any inconsistency, which I think is a little better. Safer. It's not a question of better. So door 2. There is a lady in the other room. Yes? Sure, there is a lady in the other room. Possible or not? Well, this fails on both. Well, no, it fails on one. It fails on the lady being in door 1. Because if a lady is behind or in room 1, sign has to be true. Yet we got a false. That cannot possibly be what's happening. The rules don't change and try and trick me. But if now right away the whole scenario is out, but I can practice. If a tiger is in room 2, then the sign is true. So that part is good. But all of it has to be good, or it is not what is happening. So it's out. Now, unless there are some other questions, I think we can benefit a lot from finishing this one. Well, we kind of have to. We haven't found the answer yet. I'm so used to in the other questions, we found the answer right away. I thought we already had the answer. We don't. We don't know what it is. So we need to keep going. Tiger lady scenario. Hopefully this is it, because if the poor prisoner has a tiger, at least I guess they would know that they're going to get eaten. And that could give them some peace. But that's not what we ideally want. Door 1 says, it makes no difference which room you pick. No, it's a mix. It totally makes a difference. So that's false. It does make a difference. Door 2, there is a lady in the other room. So, and that is obviously false. Now people look at, it's hard for me to guess, right? If you don't say and ask questions, it's very hard for me to guess exactly what the problem may be. People look at the false as being a bad thing and true being a good thing. That's not at all how it works. It simply tells me information that I can match. It tells me if the scenario did happen, this is how the doors behave. And I can then match that with how the doors should behave, the rules that the king gives me. Okay, it says, well, I have what behind door 1? I have a tiger. And the rules say that if a tiger is behind or in room 1, then the sign is false. Yes, good. Sign is false. Good so far, but we need to have consistency throughout. Door 2 has a lady in it. And the rule says if a lady is in room 2, the sign is false. Yes, good. So everything fits, and there is no reason to throw this out. Now I can't stop, but let's check that last one. Because if we get a not possible, I'm going to feel a little bit more confident about my answer. But again, it's totally optional. The practice, I think, is beneficial and a really good idea. We don't have that many problems like this. So I'm going to, for practice, check Tyger. Door 1 says, it makes no difference which room you pick. That's true, you're going to get eaten either way. Makes no difference. Door 2 says, there is a lady in the other room. No, there's a tiger. It's false. Okay, now let's see. Well, I have a tiger in room 1. The rules say if there's a tiger in room 1, the sign has to be false. But I got it true. That doesn't go with the rules. I don't even care what happens behind door 2. I got an inconsistency right away. Not possible. And I found my answer. I can say the prisoner should choose door 2. So slowly we're building up our experience, building up our confidence with consistency where we can. And it's a process and it takes time. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of it. Any thoughts or questions so far?
So the one that says it makes no difference in which room you pick, the only reason it's true for the lady and the tiger is they're the same.
Yeah, because they're the same, you could open either door and your outcome's the same. It makes no difference.
Okay.
But I agree that the statement is a different kind of statement to the others. Yes, for sure. I just have to think really carefully, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Just with going on all of the questions that we've gone over, there's always been a lady in the answer and told us that's how we know which door to pick. So pretty much for all of them, there's going to be a lady in the answer.
I can't say for sure that somewhere there isn't a tiger answer lurking. But I don't think so. And if there is one, then you can just say, choose nothing, run away.
So if it is a tiger answer, then just don't choose anything.
Yeah, and I mean you're still showing your work. You put a box around the row that shows it's a tiger, but I think I've tried to avoid them. But I can't be 100% sure that wouldn't happen. It's just very bad news for the prisoner.
For sure. Thank you.
All right. So when we go, feel free to ask questions about Lady and the Tiger. I'm just not seeing anything in the chat, and feel free to speak up. That's what we are here for. When we go to, feel free to interrupt me. I feel my previous course that was done in the same way, it turned out people didn't want to speak up because they felt that they were going to interrupt me. They didn't want to interrupt me. You can't raise your hand, so the only way is to just interrupt me. But because I can't see your face, it doesn't even matter. So feel free to interrupt me at any point.
I was just wondering, I was going over the problems and I found doing like the smaller size Sudoku and the other one was easier, and then there was like one that was like way bigger. I was just wondering if like on the test we should be
Yes.
practicing to do like a really big version, or just focus on the ones that were like the smaller versions?
You definitely want to start with the smaller ones. Let me just see here. Um, let me think. We do want to be able to do the 4x4 Karuji and the 9x9 Sudoku. Now, because of time in the test, even though the test is open book, it doesn't really help you for those kinds of puzzles at all. So a 9x9 Sudoku especially is a little bit too time consuming. So I won't put that on the test. But the
Okay.
4x4 Karuji can be in the test, but it will be an easier version. Because if you watch the videos, let's go there.
Okay, yeah, that makes me feel a little bit more at ease. Like I was able to
It's a
finish
time
it, but
issue.
it definitely
Yeah,
took me
yeah,
a while.
for sure. And I mean, if you understand the Sudoku game, then these 2x3 ones are well, not super fast. They can be quite fast. If we do a 4x4 Karuji, I think exercise 2.6 was in the video for sure, and that was a thing, mainly because it was the first one, and the arguments are not much more, are more difficult. In the 3x3, there's very little variation. It's very hard to have any sort of challenge. The only challenge comes in the 4x4, but for a test, I'll throw in a couple more letters to get that initial momentum happening a little bit faster. But if
Okay.
if we're doing it for practice, then it's okay for this to take a long time, knowing that the test will have, I think a T was over there. So maybe I'll start with the T, and then that initial difficulty is immediately overcome. I don't think exercise 2.7 is in the video. I always try and sort of force people to go and struggle with this. Spend half an hour or however long it takes, and it'll be beneficial. But it won't be like this. This one is, I think, a little hard to get momentum, especially in this third row is where you start, and there's a clue and stuff. But we'll throw in a couple more letters to make it a little bit less time intensive.
Okay.
And if I think I have some Karuji, I'm going to do it off screen, off the video, because it's not my ebook. But if you Google Karuji, you may find an ebook floating around. Let me just open it for a second.
Steven, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so how many questions on Karuji Sudoku can we expect on the
Right,
test?
right. So let's think. So every quiz will be 5 pages. A
Okay.
page could be an A and a B question, or maybe just one, depending on if it's a bigger question or not.
Okay.
Let's just go through this. Let me go. No, that's not what I want to do. There we go. Does that work? Yes, go. Okay, so page 1 will be a negation question, or decide if it's logically sound, the circles,
Okay.
or maybe give an example of deductive reasoning, the grass and the rain, something like that.
Mhm.
Page 2 will be a Karuji or Sudoku. Could be just one if they're small. Maybe I'll do 2 3x3s. It depends on how difficult it is. Page 3 will be a lady or the tiger question.
Okay.
And when you look at the test questions, you'll see, oh, it's like this one, it's like this one. But because I only have an hour and a bit per quiz, there's still, you can't be like, oh, how did this work again? You do need to have an idea, but they won't be unfamiliar. Then page 4 will be a 2.4 question. It could be knights and knaves, could be another kind of puzzle. There's some variety in that one for sure. But again, there we're building up. We've done some Sudoku way of thinking. We've done some Lady in the Tiger, Knights and Knaves. And when we open it up to other puzzles in section 2.4.2, which, yeah, we have done that. That's where I want to start drawing on my experience, where I see a brand new question. Is this similar to something I've seen before? Can I use my previous strategies to try and make some progress in this one? So that one is a little bit more difficult because of the variety, but section 2.4 will have a page, which is page 4. Then page 5 will be on chapter 3, which will be 2 of these, how many are there? 2 of these 10 basic problem-solving strategies.
Okay.
I don't want to put too much on a page, but in order to prepare for whichever 2 are on the quiz, you need to look at all 10 of them.
Okay.
And when we get to chapter 3, I guess next time it'll make more sense.
Okay, thank you.
So I can share this Karuji ebook, but if it's confusing to you, then don't create more confusion. But you'll see the ones that we have in our exercises come from this. Don't look at the 5x5. That, unless you want the challenge, but in terms of difficulty for this course, 5x5 is not at all what we're aiming for. And I found that by just Googling it, so it's not hopefully an issue to share it here. So when I look at
Stephen,
yes,
sorry, would there be a 9x9 Sudoku puzzle?
No, because it's a little too time consuming. Yes, it's an open book test, but we still only have roughly an hour for the quiz, which a 9x9 Sudoku could be time consuming if you sort of get stuck a little
I found
bit,
it to take a while, so
or you start with the wrong number.
Yeah, I found that too.
Yeah, and I think that's not really what the test should be. The test is trying to see, do you understand how to solve this puzzle? And adding volume to a Sudoku puzzle doesn't really add anything for the test. Yeah, so we'll stick to the smaller version for Sudoku.
Okay, thanks.
And the test that you're outlining, is that the one on May 8th?
That is the first half of May 8th. So on the 8th, we have quiz 1 and 2 covering parts 1 and 2, so half of the course. There are 4 parts if you look at the book. Each part has its own hour quiz. But we group together 1 and 2 back to back, and then 3 and 4 back to back.
Okay, so there's not quizzes and tests.
No, I use the word quiz because people get scared of the word midterm.
Yeah.
So it's not a midterm, it's just a little test. It's fine. But it's actually the same thing.
We have 1 hour to do each one.
So you have an hour per quiz, and then half an hour for technical scanning and sending back challenges.
Okay.
But of course, it's collective, right? So you have 2.5 hours to do all of this. It doesn't matter how you divide your time.
Okay, that makes way more sense.
Yes. No,
I think it did say that in the course outline.
I could very easily miss something, or something is in one spot but not another. So no, absolutely ask anything. Yeah. I believe I should have put that in our general course chat.
Yeah, I think you did. I just needed to hear it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. No, I just want to double check. Yes, it is there. The details for
Okay.
the test, and it's a pinned message. So in case it scrolls further up, you can always click on the pinned messages, and the most important ones will be there.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, good.
Also, I was just wondering, like, for the test, sometimes my writing can be messy or I write really big. If we, like, are we allowed to use scrap paper? And if we do, we should include it in the email?
So, I mean, if like me, I don't have a printer, so I would just write the answers on blank paper, which means I can use as much or as little per question as I want. So don't feel restricted by the test paper space. Just group your answer for a question, have it be one clump, and it can be as big or small as you want. Yeah.
Okay, as
Well,
long as,
not
like,
small.
the
No, you do have to
Yeah.
show some work, but as big as you want. Yes.
yeah. So as long as it's, like, clear, like, question 1 and then, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. The most difficult, not because of frustration, but I could easily miss something, is when people send pictures and one picture has half the answer and the other picture comes later on, and it's just a nightmare to try and give you your correct score. And all those things, I believe, are in the pinned message. The idea is you write your test, blank paper, print it out, do whatever you want to do, and then scan it, ideally as a single PDF, because then I can grade it and put it on the website for you to see. And beforehand, try and pretend write some answers. See if you can scan it and email it to yourself. Test all these things beforehand, because we can't submit it later than the deadline. Well, you can, but then there's a penalty and it's a whole thing. So definitely practice the scanning. And how am I going to write my answers? How am I going to email it back? There are many free scanning apps, but definitely send it to yourself first and see how long that takes. Technical difficulties can definitely happen. So that is up to you to decide how you want to do it, and definitely practice that beforehand. So if you look in our chat, the test information, it says in capital, do not send multiple emails, because then I don't know which one to mark. And send a single PDF file. Or even though I will grade it, I can't send it back to you to see where you made mistakes or anything.
So yesterday you showed us kind of how to do the the PDF assignments that we have to do. Is the quiz going to be the quiz is going to be like that, so we could just edit it right on there?
I suppose you could, but I'm not sure if it's going to be as efficient as writing it by hand. I think it's going to end up taking more time. It would for me if I were, but you certainly do have that as an option. Yeah. But if,
Okay, for sure.
yeah, if I look at my answer like this, how do I type that? It's going to be more time consuming than just writing it by hand to get to where I want to in the answer. But you certainly have that as an option. Yeah. I would, you could just test something, right? If I take this and I want to pretend there's my space and I want to write my answer over here, I could certainly do that. How easy would that be if I want to make my columns here, for example?
I see your point there. I know what you're trying to say. So
Yeah, it's not impossible. I don't know. I think it'll be more time consuming, but it's totally up to you. Test it, see what you like. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a matter of being prepared, to be honest. But there's certainly no rule. I'll accept all of those as long as it's clear, and I can figure out how many marks to give you. It's all good. Yeah. All right.
So, did you want quiz 1 and quiz 2 collectively in one PDF document?
It doesn't matter to me. What I'm trying to avoid is individual pictures of pages, because
Okay.
that is much more time consuming. But if it's quiz 1 and 2 grouped together, then I can still put it back on the website. That's easy.
Okay, just clearly label everything.
Now, if you really do not understand how to scan or do anything, I will still grade the individual pictures. I just can't give it back to you. That's the problem.
Okay.
So you're not going to get a 0 or anything like that. It's just a little bit more difficult to manage and handle. That's all. So yeah, you can have a look at that Karuji file if you want. If you've done the 2 exercises, you are looking for more. There are more in there, but they can be a little bit more difficult. There aren't that many, so just know what you're looking at. And they're not all test questions. They are definitely more difficult. When it comes to knights and knaves, and again, feel free to interrupt me. I'm just rambling on for the last 14 minutes. There, I definitely see a very close link to the lady and the tiger questions, where I have options for what John and Bill could be. And I could list all those options and then use the information in the question to eliminate possible rows instead of having a wordy, let's get rid of this, having a wordy answer, which is logically correct and sound and everything's good, but it's really hard to get that consistency and that confidence. So when I read a knights and knaves question for the very first time, I immediately think, okay, what have I seen that's similar, Lady and the Tiger? Can I use that strategy that I've established and figured out? Can I sort of transpose that into this question and use that so it's not a brand new question? I already have I've already made some progress. I have some experience, and that's exactly what happens. I can list them.
And
yeah.
Sorry, Stephen. And since we have the option of different strategies, for example, using words or using something else that you've shown us, are you evaluating the strategy, like the method we're using, or
No,
just
I'm
whether we get the correct
evaluating.
answer?
I guess I could say I'm evaluating your logic. The logic in this table strategy is just very apparent. The logic
Right.
is I list all the possibilities, I eliminate until I am left with one, and that has to be the answer. That's logically sound.
So the old
Absolutely.
adage, show your work matters.
Yeah, and when I take the other strategy, that is definitely at an early level a much more risky way to go, because now I'm going to look. I'm going to look at exactly how you say things, and
Yeah.
it's very easy to not say exactly what you mean, and I just evaluate what you wrote, and that can very easily lead to a mistake, where the whole point of the listing strategy is to avoid that tricky aspect.
Right.
But
Okay,
I
thank you.
will accept either answer, and people have certainly done that. The safer
you want
one
us
is
to-
certainly the table one. Yeah.
So you want us to write not possible, possible, and whatnot.
Yeah, come up with, no, this was
But
a
we
little
don't-
messy. Come up with
But-
a way that you understand and that works for you and that you can do consistently, and then just do the same thing.
But we don't have to explain why it's not possible. Or why
No,
it is
well,
possible.
no, I mean, in a way I have. I'm not writing a whole essay here. It's going to be extremely time consuming to explain all this in words. With my table strategy, I mean, we all know the question. If you then say, lady, the door is false, cross, that means that is the problem, and I conclude it's not possible. You've done enough here, because let me put it this way. There's no way that you would luck into this answer. You would still need to know what is happening to be able to get to the answer. you're not going to luck your way into this. Very unlikely. So that means it's sufficient as an answer for me to evaluate. Do you know how to approach this question? Can you answer it? Can you solve this puzzle? This is a perfectly fine answer. Yeah.
Okay, so then do we just have to do you want us to write a sentence? The prisoner should choose door 1?
Exactly what you're seeing on the screen is more than sufficient. Now you can of course go and not this part. Where am I now? Not that. That was something else. You can of course go and make sure you eliminate them all, but you don't absolutely need to. That's just for your peace of mind.
Okay. It's just smart.
If I had the time, I would definitely do it.
Yeah.
And I would definitely do it in any sort of practice question because it adds to my experience and things just get easier the more I do it.
Okay.
Yes.
I was just wondering, could we go over one of the questions on like page 38 dealing with other puzzles?
38. So knights and knaves, I guess, are part of that quiz page 4, but they're very similar to Lady and the Tiger. People rarely have a big issue with them if you've established your Lady and the Tiger well. The golf one, oh, it's such a classic now. So good. It's just a question of, so okay, now we have more variety here for sure. And there will be some things where I have to adjust my strategy a little bit. I have to come up with something because it's not quite what I've seen before, like this one. And it gets tricky to know how to set it up. In this exercise 218, a strategy is, again, not the only one, a strategy that is as close to what I've done previously is to list all the possibilities for each of the places, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the outcome of the game, who was first, who was second, and so on. So under first place, I'll list all the names. Under second place, I list all the names. And then I eliminate those depending on the information. But the way I eliminate them is not the same as Lady and the Tiger. I don't look at them row for row because I don't need to. If I were to, let me just make a new page here. Do I have space? It's a question of efficiency as well. I don't want to have it be overwhelming. So if I look at first place, second place, third place, and fourth place, I could list all the specific arrangements here. But there's going to be a ton of them. Well, not a ton, but way too many. I don't want to handle that many. It's going to be 24. It's too many. It's too many. When I don't need them, I just want to have a situation. What are the names? Jack, right? I just want a situation where I am left with one name in each column. It doesn't matter if it's, now I don't remember the answer, this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then that one. It doesn't matter. I just want one in each. So my process of elimination here isn't a row by row elimination because that's complete overkill. I don't need it when this is going to be sufficient. And that's a little bit tricky to recognize what is the bare minimum strategy I need to still get to the solution. But that's why we do this one in class, and you can certainly rewatch that video. It might need some rewatching. And then you can let me know if you've watched it 5 times and still doesn't make any sense. It's just a matter of going really slowly in this one. And now I have some experience now after I've mastered 218 hours later maybe. I now have some more experience that there are other elimination strategies. It doesn't have to be full rows. And of course, there's a walkthrough here pretty much and in the video. Then when I get to something like the houses, problem 217, I can now see, okay, well, I have kind of 2 options for eliminating. I have the option of doing row by row, or I have this option of just being left with one name in each column. Which one is going to be better suited for that question? So if I have a situation as in 217, now I don't want to do too much because perhaps not everyone has done these, and you certainly have to sort of struggle with it first. And you're welcome to send me a picture of your answer or whatever if you don't want to look at the answer key, which I totally understand. Feel free to send me your answers and I can check them. I have a situation here where I have three nationalities. They live in houses next to each other. The houses have colors. And then there's a to the right situation next to one person lives next to another person, one color, and so on and so on. So I could then say, okay, what makes the most sense to me is to say maybe house 1, house 2, and house 3. Now I will say there is there are two ways to interpret this. You can sort of sit in the house and then left is this side, or you can just look straight at them and then left is that side. You pick one, as long as you're consistent. Let's suppose that. Both are acceptable because it doesn't say how you should, what your perspective is. And then all I can say is, what do my possibilities look like? Is it a row for row? Do I really need to write, what are the nationalities here? Do I really need to write Swede, German, Irish for short, and then Swede, Irish, German? Do I have to look at them one row at a time? You can certainly do that, but I have way more options than I maybe need to. Depending on the information, and slowly I'll start to recognize what this requires. The way the information is presented, if I'm going in an elimination strategy, you can certainly go for another strategy. I'll mention that in a second. I don't need this much. It's overkill. Back. All I need is to have one name, a nationality at least, left, of course different ones, in each column. It doesn't have to be grouped in a row necessarily. Now, admittedly, it is difficult in the beginning, and you can ask, well, how am I supposed to know which one to do? It gets better, and you can certainly try the minimum effort approach. Can I get away with this? And then if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. In the lady and the tiger situation, I certainly couldn't do that. I can't just list lady, tiger, because they talk, they refer to each other. So I need to see the full picture to be able to evaluate if what they're saying is true or false. But the way the information is given in this case is different. And then I can do my colors here. Same way. And then I can slowly start to eliminate given the options. That's one. And it's okay if these take a little bit of time. The other option, which is going to be more efficient, if I transition in strategy from the brute force eliminate one thing at a time strategy to a more elegant, wordy strategy, there's a middle ground where I want to end up with a situation like that, for example. But I perhaps don't want to list them all and eliminate. I can just fill in as I get enough information. I can fill in which one goes where. It is going to be more difficult, but that's also a possibility. So sort of as you do more questions, a mix of these, it's not, you don't have to list everything and eliminate one by one. If it feels easier for you to just have blank space, and then as you read the clues, the information, you could sort of take a Karuji style approach and say, well, if the Swede lives directly to the right of the greenhouse, then I'll put it over here. Directly to the right of the greenhouse. That means the Swede could be over here, and the greenhouse could be over here, or the Swede could be over here, and the greenhouse could be over here. So the Karuji style approach is the sort of that middle ground, that I'm not writing every letter everywhere and eliminate them. I take the information and write options so that it's not seeing all options at all times, but sort of a middle ground that could be better in some cases, in the Karuji case, in the Sudoku case, certainly, but it can be more tricky as well. So as I do more questions, it becomes more obvious which one to go for when. And just recognize that if I try something and this doesn't work, go back to another strategy, do a full elimination. But don't make work for yourself if it's not necessary. That was a lot of rambling, I apologize. Any last questions? These are very important to do. We don't have a lot of them. I would say, however, if you are somewhat struggling, you can leave problem 2.16 to the end. 2.16 I feel is the more difficult of these three problems. So feel free to do it at the end. The house one is a nice middle ground. It's that sweet spot that it's not super easy, but if I spend a little time with it, like a Karuji, I will make some progress. But it's the only way to get better is to just spend some time with these and not get frustrated. What people tend to think, kids especially, is that if you struggle with something and you don't get to the right answer, that it was a waste of time. But that process of struggling, that process of trying something, even though it didn't work, you are making progress in terms of how you're developing. It's just very frustrating. So don't be discouraged if you try something and it didn't work. You've still learned something. Your experience did grow. But I understand that these are not easy. Once we get to once we get to chapter 3, you're going to see things are, for the most part, much easier, much more elementary level. But we need to get our own critical thinking and logical reasoning skills to a certain level so that we can adapt to a student's needs when we sit right in front of them and have to explain something. All right, someone else say something. But that's pretty much our session, I guess. Any last questions for this session?
I guess like tomorrow, even though it's a day off, you said that you'll be around to just like if we have questions.
Absolutely. I am checking Discord almost all the time.
Okay.
So even if there's something that you need to talk through, we can certainly just pop in the chat room, do it. It's easy. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can start with text, email, or chat. And if I can't quite explain what I'm looking for, we can just voice chat, all those options. So I'm always around, yeah. Because the worst thing is to sort of struggle with something and feel isolated, and that's the worst thing. We don't have time for isolation, more than we are already isolated.
So Stephen, I think for me, it's more the wording, like when I read it, and this is making more sense now, making the columns and doing all that. But I might need some extra help on that, like
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
My best advice is don't wait. We
Okay.
don't have time to wait. If
Okay.
you have issues tomorrow, I'm around. Yeah,
Okay.
we can't. I mean, usually every day, what we're doing in a day happens over a week. And then there's time to sleep on something and let
Yeah.
it sort of sit. And that's the downside of the condensed course. So any issues you have, just address them right away. We need to fix it as soon as we can. Sometimes
Okay,
sleeping
thanks.
on it is good, but we don't have a lot of time to let things just fix itself. They don't really fix themselves. We need to push through them. So yeah, no,
Okay,
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, then we will end this session here, knowing that I'm still on Discord, chat with each other. Use our course-specific chat, and you'll find whatever questions you have. Other people might have the same. Pop in a chat room, chat about it. That's what Discord is there for, to have that interaction and that support when you need it. All right, until later.